Thanks for stopping by and seeing what I'm up to. My name is Silky Feather, and you are currently with Silky Feather's Nest, or at Silky Feather's Nest. We're going to be continuing on our book, Unfuck Your Habitat, You're Better Than Your Mess, by Rachel Hoffman, read by Emily Wu Zeller.
Someone or someone's family, significant other, or peer group buys into or believes these gender stereotypes, the fact remains that they exist, and they're shoved down our throats and subconsciously embedded in our brains at every given opportunity. How many men get praised or acknowledged for doing things that women do thanklessly all the time? By giving the impression that it's remarkable when a man completes the basic tasks of domestic living, we're reinforcing the fact that we, as a society, think that this is unusual. That men should be congratulated for doing women's work. That women are lucky when their partner does half the domestic work. It's almost irrelevant if the people who are involved actually believe this, because society believes it. Why do we accept the idea that it's noteworthy when someone cleans up a mess they helped make? Silly, right? Since we don't live in the 50s anymore, thank goodness, these days women are just as likely to be working outside the home as men are. In the past, it may have been true that women spent less time and had fewer responsibilities outside the house, and that's why all of the domestic responsibilities fell to them. But it's not true anymore, and it hasn't been for quite some time. Yet we look at a man who works 40-plus hours a week at a high-pressure job, and a woman who works the same number of hours at a similarly stressful job, and we still expect that the woman is going to be the one who puts in all of the additional time to do the housework. We seriously need to step back and examine why that is. The circumstances that led to those expectations no longer exist, but the expectations themselves remain, and any deviation from them is still seen as unusual. Even knowing where all these assumptions stem from, there's no getting around the fact that we think of housework and most other domestic tasks as women's work. And it's plain to see, reinforced in hundreds of insidious ways, that as we regard domestic work as women's work, we devalue it in a way that says some uncomfortable things about not just how we view the importance of domestic work, but how we view the importance of the people who perform it. Traditionally, cleaning and cooking and all the other tasks that make up running a household are performed by women, not only in their own home, but also in the workplace. If I tell you to picture a housekeeper, I'm reasonably sure that whatever your mental picture is, it begins with a woman. And these jobs, unpaid in the home, are almost always low-wage, low-prestige jobs out in the workforce as well. And when we don't see a job as valuable, over time we also tend to think of it as easy or non-skilled, even though anyone who performs domestic work for a living or at home can tell you it's not easy at all. It's time for us to change the way we look at domestic work and the people who perform it. By seeing and acknowledging the amount of labor involved, we can start to realize that a more equal division of labor in our own homes is inherently fairer than expecting it all to fall under the umbrella of women's work. Domestic and emotional labor like house cleaning, child rearing, household management, bill paying, grocery shopping, etc., and the endless other tasks involved in running a household are labor, unpaid but critical to everyday life. These tasks are not the default responsibility of one gender or the other, just as financial contributions and major household decisions are no longer granted solely to one family member just because of his role within the household. In an equitable home, housework is the responsibility of every person who lives there, unless all parties have agreed otherwise. It's well beyond time to expect everyone to contribute to the domestic aspects of their own household, to expect everyone to acquire the skills necessary to keep a home, and to stop expecting that all domestic responsibilities should automatically fall to one member of the household just because of gender. It's well beyond time to stop buying into this bullshit and to start making our households functional and happy, with all tasks divided up fairly. The Case for 2010s. Marathon cleaning and why it's a bad idea. When faced with a messy home, most people who aren't predisposed to be domestically competent tend to do the same thing. Wait for it to get to the point where you absolutely cannot stand to look at it for one more second, and then spend a day or 2 or 3 cleaning like a maniac until it's livable again. Then you wait for it to get to the worst point again and do the same thing a few weeks or months later, doing mostly nothing in between. This is what we call marathon cleaning, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't. Why not? Well, a few reasons. It's all or nothing. For a few days, you work your ass off and have a completely clean home, but then you do absolutely nothing for days or weeks or months. In the meantime, your home is getting progressively worse and worse until it hits the lowest point before you decide to do something about it again. Marathons can be unhealthy. Many people manifest anxiety or manic episodes with marathon cleaning. This isn't ideal, because you're only cleaning when you're not in a good headspace, and you begin to associate the act of cleaning with being sick or mentally distressed. When cleaning becomes a symptom or a result of your mental state, you tend to wrap it up in way too much emotion, and it becomes an activity fraught with negative associations. It's not sustainable. You can't use marathons as a way of maintaining a clean house if you're a busy person, because there's just not enough time to spend hours a day cleaning up the shit. And on the rare day that you do have that kind of time to spend, the odds of you spending it all cleaning are pretty slim. It's temporary. Your house is only clean for a few days at a time, at most. The rest of the time, you're living in mess or filth and not doing anything to improve it, because it hasn't gotten bad enough. You tend to focus on the very short period of time after everything is all cleaned up, and forget about the incrementally increasing disaster for the rest of the time. Marathons don't help you build habits. Things get really awful. You marathon, and then you wait for them to get bad again. In between, you aren't doing anything to help yourself sustain a clean environment. Doing a little bit at frequent intervals is a more useful habit than spending hours cleaning everything with a really long time in between. I think it's safe to say that most people approach housekeeping with a marathon state of mind, and this is primarily why so many of our homes are complete messes. Why would you spend time cleaning your house if it's not completely terrible, right? Well, that's dangerous thinking right there. Because our goal is to not have a terrible house for the majority of the time. Our goal is to keep a relatively clean and livable house with a minimal amount of effort, both on a daily basis and for the big cleans. You know, when you find out that your landlord or parents or favorite movie star is dropping by for a visit. Ideally, you'll get to a place where those surprise visits will be easily dealt with in a very short amount of time, without any real stress or anxiety on your part. Hell, if everything goes right, someone could just ring your doorbell unannounced. Although how rude, right? And you could have them in for a visit without the slightest hesitation or freak out. Does that sound impossible? If so, that's completely okay. Right now, your home is probably in a state of chaos that you can't picture digging out from under anytime soon. And that's fine. That's normal. That's why you're looking around for a better solution. Looking at the bigger picture of your home as a whole is almost always going to be overwhelming. And when you're overwhelmed, getting started seems like an impossible proposition. It seems even more impossible if you're approaching it with the mindset of marathon cleaning, because you see a big mess and assume it means a big cleanup that takes a lot of time and energy and will leave you exhausted and with no time left for anything else. When you look at a whole house mess, you're focusing entirely on the big picture. Everything is a disaster. It all needs to be done. Well, there's no rule saying it all needs to be done at the same time. In order to keep from feeling like the project is too big to handle, you need to step away from that big picture and turn a critical eye to small sections at a time. Small sections are far less terrifying to consider, and reordering your thinking so you can do 1 or 2 small areas and then stop will help you build the skills you need to get your home clean. And to keep.
There we've reached our 10-minute mark. I will zip it back 30 seconds when I start next time, so we can kind of make sure that we're always on time. This is Silky Feather's Nest. Well, Silky signing from Silky Feather's Nest. You guys have a great afternoon. Be kind to one another. Life is way too short. Like and subscribe so you can keep up with Unfuck Your Habitat. Ta-ta.